So, can you see my screen clearly?
Yes.
And also my view of speaking?
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
So thank you for inviting us here today for SIGGRAPH Asia 2020. And I'm so excited to be here to speak to you. Welcome you all. Today we'll give you a short lecture about mapping an interactive documentary of batik textiles in Java. My name is Yunke Sun, and I'm a graduate student at Digital Humanities program from at University College London. And my research interest currently is in the application of technology to preserve the cultural heritages, especially with a focus in East Asia. And let's welcome my co-presenter, Le Tian Wang.
Hi, so my name is Le Tian, and I'm currently a student in Trinity College Dublin. I study interactive digital media. My research mainly focus on interactive documentary, digital media art, digital heritage, gamification, and human-computer interaction. So the project we're working on is Indonesian Batik, which is a interactive documentary. We also want to express our great appreciation to Renown and DM for their generous help and great efforts and dedication to the project under this difficult situation. Renown was mainly responsible for our film production, while Dian shared with us her rich research in batik and Indonesia culture heritage. So
Okay.
let's introduce the project aim. Welcome, Yunke.
Okay, there are three fundamental aims of our project. The first one is to propose our original concept of Digital Heritage Plus, which describes the co-creation happening between the producer communities and the audiences to make human-centered, narrative-based contents. And these contents help to express and construct the facts of intangible cultural heritages. We'll just call it ICH throughout the presentation to save the time. And secondly, we use interactive documentaries to arouse the worldwide public's interest in learning more about ICH in a more participatory way. And in this case, we use Indonesian batik as a textbook-like example to arouse or revive people's awareness of ICH by strengthening the interaction between people and these cultural objects. So then we use localization, this word, to describe the whole process where the model of ICH from Indonesia is spread throughout the world and maybe localized to different countries and regions. And then the third purpose of this project is to design an interactive documentary of the platform to bridge the researcher community and the general public.
Okay, so let's grab the basic understanding of interactive documentary before we kick off the project. So we call the interactive documentary as IDoc. It is any project that intends to embrace the reality by means of interactive technology. The concept of IDoc challenges the aim of traditional documentary, which focuses on being objective. In the digital context, the process of making a documentary is more like a construction of reality among the creator and audience's community using interactive media technology. As interactive documentary has a very broad definition, it is not only limited to web pages, but also includes location-based experience, augmented or virtual reality application, media installation, etc. As long as the producer confirms the theme, they can embed the theme into any media technology. For example, the project we're going to develop will only choose to use the web as our medium. For further development, we consider moving the project offline through an immersive workshop or maybe a media installation. No matter which medium we choose, the concept of IDoc guides us to think about platforms and design of a reality-based interactive experience. So here we have 4 interactive modes. In IDoc 2012 Symposium, Aston and Goldenzy suggested 4 interactive modes. These modes are generalized by the analysis of a series of interactive documentaries, and they are able to guide producers to think about how to design a reality-based interactive experience. A production can go with only one of the modes here. It can also include multiple modes, depending on which immersive experience degree the director wants to bring to the audience. Okay, so here's the first one. We call it conversational mode because it uses 3D worlds to create an apparently seamless interaction with the user. It lends itself to the conversational mode because it positions the user as if in conversation with the computer. DocuGame is a very good example. The game That Dragon Cancer was made by Ryan and Amy Green, who were the parents of Joe, a cancer patient. Based on the creators' real family stories, players can unlock the memories, hear thoughts, the joy of Joe's laughter by exposing themselves into a 3D environment and navigating the narrative through input devices such as a computer mouse or touch screen, if the game is on the mobile. Next, we have the hypertext mode. It lends itself to the hypertext mode because it links assets within a closed video archive and gives the user or the audience an exploratory role, normally enacted by clicking on pre-existing options regarding this mode. Journey to the end of the code, which is showing in this video, shows the feature of pre-existing choices. Stories, in this case, associated with video clips are based on choices. By clicking the mouse, viewers can decide which story to explore. Next, we have the participative mode, which counts on the participation of the user to create an open and evolving database. The example of Global Lives project by Harris in 2010 turned out the possibility of crowdsourcing in documentary production to build such a database. As we plan to have a collaborative production, the participative mode is the main mode for our project. In the production stage, we invited scholars and TV producers from Indonesian local and global community to find out content, such as batik material selection, the process of making batik, the design and representation of batik motif, and so on and so forth. Forms of those contents include but not limited to video clips, audio interview, academic articles, geo-information, etc. Finally, we have the experiential mode. It brings users into physical space and creates an experience that challenges their senses and their enacted perception of the world. For instance, Frankie, the documentary robot, is a media installation that aims to learn about human beings by interviewing people through artificial intelligence. The installation itself is ensembling a real human being, which leads us to enjoy the beauty of flawed individuals from the outsider's perspective. So why do we choose iDoc for the whole project? I think it is really important for us to understand it before we talk about the batik project, as we're going to propose a brand new structure or framework in the digital heritage field. We saw a lot of traditional digital heritage projects in forms of maps, 3D models, articles, and blogs, etc. They are lack of narrative framework and interactivity. So those projects only circulated in academia in most cases, and hard to understand for most people as well. We want to rethink the using of interactive technologies such as a map, quiz, or crowdsourcing to design the narration in the context of digital heritage. Thereby, we propose interactive documentary, iDoc, as an approach to create digital preservation of cultural heritage projects, as it can compensate for the shortages that I mentioned before. One feature of it is constructing the truth rather than representing the truth. In this case, people will have a chance to learn a particular culture through an interactive way, while real-time contents can be shared for humanities researchers to observe. By documenting batik through iDocs, audiences, both from inside and outside the local community, are given more authority to explore online contents and learn more about the techniques, the local culture, batik patterns, and its symbols, and even to promote the communication between the local community and the general public in the rest of the world. Now, Yunke will introduce our topic of iDoc, batik.
Okay, so we choose batik as the theme of our project. The word batik is derived from the Japanese word embatik in its origin, where emba is a verb, it means to write, and tik is a noun that means dot. And batik is technically and artistically demanding. It is a very demanding tradition of wax-resistant dyeing, also known as loyan, and it also refers to the cloth that is made by this technique. And the technique is often passed down through generations. It is closely associated with the cultural identity of Indonesian people. And Indonesian batik was highly recognized as a masterpiece of oral and intangible cultural heritage of humanity by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Batik was chosen for our project as it is a very successful example of preservation of the traditional ICH, and it shows how ICH can still plays out as a very active role in people's contemporary everyday life. So surprisingly, it is still very popular even nowadays among young people compared with other traditional techniques throughout the world. And then we assume that interaction happened between batik and Indonesian people could serve as a very inspiring case for the preservation and sustainability of ICH in this modern world. And hopefully this model will also give confidence and arouse people's awareness to revive and strengthen intangible cultural heritage in the rest of the world. Okay, the batik is of uncertain origin since wax-resistant dyeing of fabric is an ancient art form which exists in many ancient civilizations like Egypt in the 4th century BC, Tang Dynasty, Japan during the Nara period, and etc. However, the art form of batik is the most highly developed in the island of Java in Indonesia, whereas the origin of Javanese batik is still highly debated among archaeologists. Some believe that it is introduced from India or Sri Lanka, whereas others argue that it is just a native tradition in Indonesia. This debate will probably never end due to a lack of written documentation and extant textiles. On the other hand, the uncertainty of the uncertainty of its origin is also related to the geographic location. The Indonesia archipelago is located on the major ocean travel routes, so therefore it has extensive contacts with other cultures, and it also experienced many centuries of trades, exploration, and colonizations. So each state in Indonesia have its own unique form of batik. For example, in Central Java, batik usually comes in the form of dimmer and softer colors and stylized imagery, which was reserved only for the royalty family in the past, and other ordinary people will be punished if wearing these certain types of batik. And meanwhile, in the southern Sulawesi, its batik is known for its brightly colored and naturalistic figures. The statistical data on the number of batik motifs in Indonesia now has yet to be identified, since every region has continued to develop its own motifs by the character of the society, culture, and natural resources. In our demo, we'll show you later, the geographical distribution will be translated into an interactive map, which will give more details for audience to explore various batik motifs in different regions of Indonesia. So there are maybe thousands of batik designs. Many of them have special cultural significance. Scholars agree that Javanese batik has been an extraordinarily dynamic art form, since it's assimilating a myriad of inspirations and styles from other cultures while developing and keeping its own unique characteristics and Javanese aesthetics. In general, there are two categories of batik design. You can tell from the slides. The first one, the geometric motifs, which tend to be the earlier designs, and free-form designs on the right-hand side, which are based on stylized patterns of natural forms or imitation of woven textures. Central Javanese designs are greatly influenced by traditional patterns and colors. Batik from the north coast of Java became greatly influenced by Chinese culture due to the frequent trades with Chinese merchants in history. And these batik are of more brighter colors and with more intricate flowers and cloud designs. So different batik, different motif serve different purposes as well. For example, certain batik designs are reserved for bride and grooms as well as their families, and other designs are reserved for sultan, his family, or their attendants. A person's rank could also be determined by the pattern of the batik he or she wore as well. For example, in history, the Parang batik motif, you can tell on the left-hand side, was once one of the most prohibited motifs. It's reserved for the royal courts of Yogyakarta and Surakarta, and some were exclusively to the king only, and it is known as the sword pattern, and it was related to the keris, the keris, a ceremonial dagger, which delivers a sense of strength, power, and authority and speed. The featured curved line of Param could also be translated as waves in the sea. It's symbolizing the power and greatness of nature. And there have been a lots of legends emphasizing the supernatural power of Parang batik, Parang motif to bring victory in the war, protection and the healing of the disease and the wounds for royal family. And the next one. As a part of Indonesians' cultural identity, batik is ingrained into both people's everyday life and the ritual or traditional festivals. Batik is also an essential element when performing traditional music and dance.
Okay, let's introduce some interactive design for Indonesian batik. Get started from the previous literature. So in Paley's community design theory, he suggested lowercase things and capitalized things. The former refers to the separate objects and artifacts, whereas the latter one refers to practices, representations, expressions, knowledge, and skills. Therefore, the idea inspired us to create a human-centered experience. Specifically in our case, we see things as traditional digital heritage projects, such as interactive maps, 3D models, research articles, and so on. The capitalized thing is more like an interactive narrative framework and incorporates these lowercase things. The design is aiming to attract more people by offering a platform to let people engage in learning a culture and participate in the culture promotion and development. Our idea has been proved by the theory proposed in Nancy Takayama's Heritage and Culture and Creative Industry presentation. She suggested that design needs started by understanding the meaning and importance of culture, and design of capitalized things can contribute to heritage. Hereby, we want to propose the concept of Digital Heritage Plus. As most digital heritage projects are designed for academic purposes, the research output is sometimes obscure and professional for normal people. Just like we mentioned before, we understand things as separate digital objects like video footages, 3D models. We connect them to design capitalized things. We call programmers, artists, researchers, and TV producers, together with our audiences, produce human-centered, narrative-based content to express and construct the facts of intangible cultural heritage, which is ICH. But why express and construct? Because it matches the concept of interactive documentary, which is constructing the truth rather than representing the truth. Let's Rinke will introduce her people, thing, people metrics.
Okay, following the concept of Digital Heritage Plus, we then count the interactions potentially occur here in our iDoc and made up a relationship matrix of people and thing, or thing in capitalized. And we assume that these interactions might generate some known or new benefits for people who engage in this iDoc. Ideally, through the iDoc we design, four types of interaction could be realized. The first interaction on the left-hand side, people to thing, could occur when people actively seek for related artifacts, objects, or experience. And the second interaction, thing to people, on the right, happens when this thing or thing in the iDoc is attractive enough and draws people's attention to it. Since our iDoc also aims to fill out the gap between the general public and the scholars, the third and fourth interactions happen within people, specifically between scholars and general public. The third interaction, scholars to people, happens when scholars post their frontline ideas and shed some light on the problems or questions raised by the public. And also scholars could collect their data from the general public through the iDoc by posting paid or non-paid surveys on these forum pages. The last one, the last interaction, the public to scholars, could occur when public desire to reach out to scholars and they want to make some inquiries throughout this platform. Scholars could help to address and answer their questions and clear some mysteries through this iDoc as well. And then the interactions of people I mentioned above is indicating the co-creation among people, which emphasizes human activities and thoughts, not just technology. According to Christina Spurgeon, the term co-creative media implies an autonomous relationship between individual creator and technology, where individuals are with independent minds, and these individuals use technology as a tool to facilitate the participatory media, which allow people to actively engage in and make interactions with others. So how to design a Digital Heritage Plus projects? Here are a few steps to follow. The first one, we need to brainstorm anything you can come up with a particular culture or object that you're interested in. And since this is based on a traditional documentary, for the next step, we still need to get to know the elements required to make it traditional documentary. And then we need to confirm what parts can be digitalized in your iDoc project. For example, in our project, we use 3D models embedded. And then you can zoom in and zoom out to see the details and rotate it around, right? And after that, we should also define which interactive narrative to use in your iDoc project. We'll talk about it a little bit later for the fundamentals of iDoc. And the next step is to design a prototype for our project. In this case, we use Extrude to design the prototype. And then when the prototype is ready, then what we need to do next is to develop creative codes. And if the project is based on the website, usually we use HTML5 and JavaScript. If making a media installation in a real world exhibition space, which is another form of iDoc project, in that case, we can choose to use Arduino to develop our codes for sensor technologies. And the last thing to do is to test and finalize the project by inviting the audiences to engage in the whole process and to find out if there are any problems with it. So here comes to the fundamentals of iDoc. To make an iDoc, we need to start off with getting to know the fundamentals of it, which are interactive narrative structures. The first one, as you can tell, the diagram below is called time cave, which is a typically heavily branching structure in the branching sequence, and it is the basis of interactive narratives. So as you can tell, every choice has its equal significance here. So however, this branching structure like pattern, there's no clear there's no or only little remerging or rejoining. So users cannot go backtracking or rejoining in this situation. They can only go down the branches of the storyline. Since the storyline is broader rather than longer, it is relatively difficult for players to grasp or comprehend the whole content in their first experience. And the next one is gauntlet structure. Compared with the time cave structure, this one, the gauntlet narrative is longer rather than broader. This pattern plays out a relatively linear center thread with branches on its side, which end in death, and people can backtracking or quick rejoining the story. So we call it pseudo-linear structure. And the next one is called loop and grow. This one has a linear thread structure as well, and which loops around over and over to the same point. However, each time around it will just unlock some new options or close off the old ones. This one is a very general pattern, and it can coexist or incorporate many other narrative structures. And the last one is called open map. As you can tell from the diagram, there's no clear beginning and clear end of the story in the open map structure. The narrative tends to be slower paced and less directed for users. And in this case, the player has more leisure and they can explore they can have more leisure and the agency to explore and grasp the world, but they spend less of their time advancing the story like the previous ones. So many works will involve elements of multiple interactive narratives instead of just falling into one single pattern. For example, The Journey to the End of the Coal, which was mentioned before by Le Tian as an example of hypertext modes, one of the 4 interactive modes. This one involves both gauntlet and open map patterns. So Journey to the End of the Coal has both a relatively linear central thread storyline, which ends in quick rejoining, and it also a slower paced and less guided environment for users to play. And here comes the technology part.
Okay, so depending on different stages, we choose different tools to realize our ideas. In the first stage of our iDoc design, we consider building upon the pure HTML. First, we need to prototype the project, which includes the project structure and user interface design. We use mind maps to draw our brainstormed ideas first and then move to Extra to design each page in relation to a particular idea. Second, we code HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript to achieve the user interface. Third, by using HTML5 Web Storage API, we save related data locally. And I think we're currently working on turn the HTML5 into a framework, for example, Angular. And when it comes to our future development, we plan to have a single page application as well that based on the framework. And we want to use Node Express as the backend and MongoDB or MySQL as the database. This will incorporate the process of the component, service, and database design. So to begin our journey with Angular, first, let's figure out how it works. Okay, from the diagram here, we can see how a view of Angular application is constructed. From the top, there is a module, which includes one or multiple components. Components should present properties and methods for data binding in order to mediate between the view, which rendered by the template, and application logic. In a nutshell, they're embraced by metadata in the controller, which is the TS file, like templates that control the rendering of an HTML page through the manipulation of document object model, which we also call it DOM. The CSS file that stylize the page and HTML selectors, which give the template an HTML tag to bring up the content to a proper place. Okay, say we have created a home component, which is here, with the HTML code, the CSS file, and the selector named app-home, which is here. Okay. How to make sure these contents are displayed on the screen after Bootstrap? We need to call the selector in the root component, which is in our case app.component.html file here. So by adding app-home, we bring the content to our root component, and we can see the content here. Home component works, which can matches the code here. Next, the module and component designs are not only for an organized data and UI component structure, but also for the code reusability. Here we talk about the data circulation in Angular. This means in such a single application, we will be able to build the interaction between components and data. As we talked about the data circulation, by introducing the concept of data binding, which encompasses the property binding and event binding, we can realize the basic interaction between components and data. Additionally, to display the changes, we introduced the directive, which enables us to control the DOM and things being displayed on the screen. In its nature, a component itself in Angular is a directive. It also helps the DOM to interact with an event and data change. So here comes the example of our property binding. As you can see here, I'll show you something. In the left side, this is our service file, where we have the GeoInfo property class, which includes the ID, name, latitude, longitude, and these things are the basic types of our GeoInfo list here. So we have the data set and we save it in the GeoInfo array in our service file. And we also have the data service here, which contained the fetch data function. So inside the fetch data function, basically it means when people execute it, it will return the data set from the GeoInfo. And on the right-hand side, we have the TS file. Sometimes people call it the controller. First, how we connect the service file and the TS file. That's very simple. By importing the data service class and the geoinformation property class, we from the service file, we can simply connect these two files. And then we have the template URL here. That means this TS file or the controller controls the HTML file here. The name of the HTML file is called datalist.component because we created it before. Okay. And inside the TS file, after we imported the data service and GeoInfo property, we still need to do something in order to get the data into our HTML file page. How can we do that? First, we create a GeoInfo list as an array, and we give it a type called GeoInfo property. So after we give it the type, inside the geoinformation property array, so each element inside it will contain at least 4 elements, which we defined here. They are ID, name, latitude, and longitude. And by injection of the data service here, we do a fetch data in the uninitiate event. So by doing the fetch data, we have the array of data passed to the geoinfo list that we created before. And now we have inside the TS file, we have the geoinfo list, which is an array contains our geoinfo data. In the HTML file, we just need to call them out. So how to do that? By doing the ng4 directive. So we're looping through the geoinfo list, and then we can see the final result here in the right picture. You see here, so data of geoinfo list. Inside the data of geoinfo list, we have name, latitude, and longitude. And it will show this information will be shown here prospectively. Similarly, when we create a like button with the click event in your iDoc project, a component displaying the data, or let's say the number of likes will be updated in real time. We call this process an event binding. Okay, just before the introduction of component-based structure, I also want to add something here. With the help of services, we can increase the data and program logic reusability, just like those examples that I showed before, as the data or functions here can be shared between different components. Next, borrowing the concept of component, we implement it into our design. As the big plan is shown on the left, we have 3 basic pages, or we say components, which include the journey of our project. First, we enter the landing page where people can see the data visualization as a quick introduction. Second, we will demonstrate several stories based on different batik motifs. Finally, after watching the story, the user has the chance to either explore our gallery, play with the interactive map, design the batik motif with our workshop game, or participate in our documentary through the forum. We call the last process the experience. So there are also some component-based structure. The components-based structure also has some features to think about here. First, it is very maintainable, which means if we do not need one part, we can easily remove the component and vice versa. Remove the component from the framework and vice versa. Second, it is easy to build a connection between the content of the interactive documentary and the program component design. We'll see the some details here of our iDoc project. So the web documentary diagram reviewed the interrelationship of every component from the current project. In this diagram, every block is the component, so does each line. Each line inside the block. But the former served as the main component, whereas the latter served as the subcomponent. First, I categorized 3 components groups based on their functionality, which are function group here, story components group here, and experience components group here. Grouping is to improve the code reusability and clearly showed our designed framework. Then I started to work out the whole story experience design from the homepage. As the root component, it consists of function bar and content canvas for rendering the interactive story and other contents like the experience and interactive map. Inside the content canvas, we load the landing page to show people visualize the data. Actually, it's here with the background music and CSS files to control the text and animation. Of course, with the help of some JavaScript. We also give our audience a skip option, which is here. It enables our canvas showing the interactive story, which contains a short introduction, a map of the motif origin, and a 3D model to play with, and the multimedia placeholder with the play button if there is a video file inside, which is something showed here. And we click on the forward button, it will, just change the story page, the story 1 to story 2. And these stories actually are retrieved, are some data that's stored in our database, or let's say the services defined by the ID. So if you click the forward button, it will, for example, we're currently on the page 1, which refers to the ID 0. The content of the story will change to ID 2, the previous one is ID 0, and then we'll change to the ID 1, which indicates the story 2. And by clicking on the multimedia placeholder here, we go to the media player page, or say media player component. In this case, we click on the video source and we play it, for example, some source from some video sources from YouTube, and we play it. And after we watch it, we just click on the close button, and it will help us to return to the story component. And here we have the project demo. Let's get started of the demo here.
On the landing page, the color maps here display the domestic use of batik in Indonesia. So each one represents a certain group of people, like kindergarten children, college students, community, private employees, and etc. Bubbles on the map refer to the amount of people in their group that wear batik in their daily life. And there are figures on sites for this group of people accordingly. The map will change in every 2 seconds to give the audience and visual impacts. And the bubbles are also designed to show how big the crowd is in different regions in the country. The darker and lighter colors refer to the density of the crowd in each region. And for the moment, while the figures are real collected from researchers, these bubbles are just placeholders, since there is a lack of data of distribution and density of the population who wear batik.
Okay, so here we comes to the story page. So in this page, we just want to tell people, oh, what is a batik motif? And here's the text description here. And also you can see we have 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 5 sections here. So this section is for the quick introduction of the topic, while the right-hand side, we can see the 3D models here we can play with. I think we had an example showed before in our presentation slides. And also just below the section, we have the tools. If you click on that, you will see the specific details of what to use when making the batik. And then we have the batik making process video here to describe how people make a batik in Indonesia. And in the left-hand side, in the bottom of left-hand side, we can see an interactive map here, which describes the diversity of the Indonesian batik here. So we can play with it. So you can see loads of data here. They can actually connect it with the database for crowdsourcing technologies. Maybe we're gonna mention it later in our future development. So let's play a clip of video and show, and grab some basic understanding of the project and what is it about. As you can see here, is playing the process of making batik, and by watching this kind of video, you will understand people here how they make the batik and how delicate the process is. And then after watching it, you can go back to the main page and to explore the index page, which is here. We have the stories and experiences. We have the featured content, gallery, workshop, and forum for our experiences part, but we're still working on them. So yeah, unfortunately in this demo, we cannot show it here. Okay, let's get back to our presentation slides. So let's talk about the future development here. First, the definition of crowdsourcing was defined by Bynum in 2019 as the thought of a specialized variant of outsourcing, one where specific content is solicited from a large and often anonymous online community. Individuals respond to a call for information by providing small amounts of data. As our future plan, we intend to design a batik online community where users can write comments and share photos or videos. The design of the forum will directly establish a relationship between the general public and researchers. In the space, researchers, especially anthropologists, are able to publish their research topics to call for the participation of content creating based on the topic, whereas the public can upload their creation and communicate with the professionals. Thereby, by developing a forum, we realized crowdsourcing to facilitate the communication between the public and professionals, which could benefit both communities. Next, we have the mapping technology. In terms of it, we have multiple uses. First, it can serve as an index to display specific batik information, which means you can explore our geodatabase on the map. Secondly, the interactive map in our project as a part of our narrative framework helps people to understand how it grew and distributed. Also, by the application of GeoJSON, which you can see in the left picture, we're able to crowdsource through database in our future development, which makes this project very flexible and content up to date. Of course, this will be linked with our backend database. And pictures shown below, especially in the right picture, it's the final effect of the combination of a database and the interactive map. As you can see, if you click on the icon here, you will see the specific detail of the data that retrieved from the database. Next, Yunke will introduce the gallery feature.
Okay, series of photos will be displayed in groups here in a digital gallery in our iDoc, where users can take their own time to appreciate the details of different batik motifs from Indonesia at their own pace. When users click the refresh button on the right-hand side, a new group of random batik motifs will be displayed with descriptions for each one. And the background music of traditional gamelan will even create a more immersive environment for people who are attending this gallery. So our iDoc will also include an online workshop for batik, which is inspired by a very popular game, Animal Crossing. In this workshop, users will be allowed to customize and design the details of batik cloth with traditional tools, and they can also dye the cloth with customized colors. Users may upload their finished work to the forum, and other users will be able to view, repost, and comments below. And we will later develop a location-based interactive map on which users can view designs and interact with other designers throughout the world. So there are also some potential business opportunities here. Users or designers can order their own designs of batik from this page, and local artisans or local vendors of different prices would receive the orders and make the batik. So there's a chance for users that they can wear their own design, which could be handmade directly by the local artisans in Indonesia. So for users, this will be a very unique experience, which extend their online interactive experience with batik to the offline real world, so that they can feel the Indonesia culture by wearing and touching. Okay, the whole process here is actually an embodiment of the concept of co-creative media, which we mentioned before, and which is a participatory experience facilitated by people, not just technology.
Here is the use of question and quiz. Inspired by the idea of BBC Interactive News, we realized that questionnaire and quiz can be a part of narrative. For example, by introducing a quiz before the story, we can know the user's knowledge level of a particular culture. Depending on the quiz result, contents will be adapted accordingly. As the picture depicted here, I typed my date of birth here and my country here. In the right picture, it showed up with the information that I provided and says my country leader and the closest match, which is a part of the feedback of the quiz, and it also acts as the narrative framework. Additionally, we hope to develop the question and quiz not only as a narrative approach, but also as a research tool. With our crowdsourcing feature, we're able to collect users' answers for research purposes. Here is the interaction with the real space. As the definition of interactive documentary is very broad, as we mentioned before, the flexibility of concepts enables the potential of moving the project offline. For example, a media installation is possible if we cooperate with a gallery. We intend to design 3 screenings facing 3 walls, which explore life and batik making process and batik architecture prospectively. With one control device, maybe an all-in-one computer with touchscreen or KineSense for gesture recognition, we can directly control what you see on the screen from every life aspect. To conclude, the shift from digital heritage to digital heritage plus, realized by interactive documentary, resurges and encourages ICH to be ingrained in people's everyday life and allows more interaction happening between the general public and scholars. Again, we want to thank all the supporters for their commitment and efforts. Thank you all for coming today. So here is the end of our session. We hope you enjoyed and see you soon in our later Q&A session.
Thank you, Yunke and Letian. This is a really great presentations. So from those 2 energetic and young scholars' view, we can get to see how we move from the digital heritage and purpose, from the side research and also the digital documentations, and further push the boundary towards the intangible heritage, in their case, the batik textile, and utilize those nonlinear, storytelling structures plus the coding to collaborate with the backends. We can really conduct, even intriguing narrative, based on those IDA concept, and then further contribute, to the storytelling and also the narrative. So thank you very much, Yunke and Letian.